Everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a nice 10-game Major League Baseball slate for you. We do have some weather in this slate, so do keep that in mind. But before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Helps the channel a lot. Really do appreciate it. So this weather concern during the first 4 games, mostly, but I do think everything ends up playing. There could be some light delays throughout the games. With that said, let's go ahead and get into this slate. Let's start with our pitchers today. Pitching is kind of deep today. We got a lot of guys that can hit good strikeout numbers. We'll start with Valdez, who's our top play. He's got a favorable match against the White Sox. The only guy that really has some potential today here is Luis Robert Jr. But even then, Valdez has limited the home runs this season, so he's in a fantastic spot. He's also not the most expensive pitcher, which is nice, and he's nicely priced here for this matchup. He's also got a good strikeout rate for this game and definitely gives us a ton of upside here. Some other GPP options: Manga for the Cubs against Toronto. He has struggled some, but he has a high ceiling and a low floor, so he's definitely kind of a contrarian play at this point. At the price point is not ideal, but his strikeout rate is good enough to be tied for one of the better on the slate, so the best on the slate. So he's definitely somebody I would consider there. Kelly for Arizona has a favorable match against Tampa Bay. He's also been pretty inconsistent lately, but he does have some good upside with the strikeout potential today, though it's not as good as some of the other pitchers. He's definitely more of a contrarian play, as he won't be the highest owned guy on the slate. Looking at George Kirby for Seattle, he's also somebody that looks pretty solid as a GPP play. His strikeout rate is about the same as Kelly's, though, so he's not perfect, but he definitely has some potential for a decent game and has a higher ceiling than Kelly does. Lopez for Minnesota is very interesting today against Texas. He's got a pretty good ceiling. He's had a couple rough games, but for the most part, he's been solid this season. Though I will note that Corey Seager has had 6 at-bats against him and has hit 3 home runs in those 6 at-bats, so there is a concern there, but I do think he's a viable option on the slate. One other guy to consider would be Kershaw for the Dodgers. He does have a favorable matchup with St. Louis, excuse me. He hasn't gone super deep in any games yet, but he should be able to get enough strikeouts to be at least reasonably decent here. And St. Louis is one of the weaker teams on the slate, so he's definitely worth a consideration there. As for some extreme GPP plays, Sonny Gray for St. Louis has a very difficult match with the Dodgers, but he has been pretty successful lately, so he's definitely somebody that considers an extreme GPP play. A couple of boomer bust plays: Singer for Kansas City, and maybe Alexander for Arizona, for Tampa Bay against Arizona, but that's kind of high risk, high reward. Also, Ma from Texas against Minnesota is kind of that. A Hail Mary play, though, would be Francis for Toronto against the Cubs. He's dirt cheap and gives you some potential as a cheap play there. And the Cubs don't look all that great today, so he is very risky, though. That's why he's a Hail Mary call. Let's look at our catchers today. So we do like. I should note this slate starts at 1:30, so it's only a couple hours away. But looking at Salvador Perez as top overall play at this position, he's got good hitting metrics and home run upside today. He's definitely worth a look on this slate. I think Kansas City is one of my favorite teams to kind of stack up here. Cal Raleigh for Seattle also looks really solid. He's a little bit cheaper, and he's got the good home run metric as well, and so that definitely helps you pay up into the positions. Looking at the ownership here, Freddie Furman, though, will be in play. Keibert Ruiz, Salvador Perez, and Cal Raleigh. Now, I don't know if Furman will end up playing today, but if he does, he'll be somebody to look at. Also, Ryan Jeffers is kind of a low-owned upside contrarian play on the slate. Looking at first base here, we do have a pretty deep first base today. Sometimes I don't like first base, but today I do think it's very good at the top, especially with Bryce Harper. Uh-oh. Harper's not in the lineup today? It doesn't look like he is. Okay, so Harper is not in the lineup, so you can ignore him. Sorry about that, guys. We'll look at Ohtani, and Josh Naylor is a top overall plays. Ohtani has good home run metrics as usual. Josh Naylor, meanwhile, is nice and cheap today compared to Ohtani at least, and has just as much upside as he does. He's been very solid lately, has a lot of potential, and he's definitely worth a home run potential guy right there. Some contrarian options, or top ownership rather, at this position: Salvador Perez, Andres Chaparro, and then, well, Bryce Harper's not playing. Low-owned upside guys: Otani, Luke Rayleigh, Vinny Pasquantino. A couple value plays that you could look at: Tyler Black and Zach Denzenzo. Both very cheap and have some potential at this position. And of course, Salvador Perez can play in at this first base as well. Looking at second base, this is a very interesting position today, because we have a nice dirt cheap guy and Shea Whitcomb, who can play here or at shortstop. He's first game he hit 2 hits and got a double and walked once against the White Sox. I look for him to have another solid game here. He's also $2,000. He's going to be top ownership on this slate probably, and he's definitely worth putting at second or shortstop. I do like him better at shortstop, where there's a lot less choice of good options. Whereas this position, we have quite a few good guys um, at second base that we like. One being Altuve. Now his metrics are not off the charts today, but he does have good hitting metrics today, so he's definitely worth a look from that perspective. Miguel Garcia has really good hitting metrics as well. Not so much home run upside, but he's definitely somebody to consider on the slate. Polanco for Seattle might be one of my favorite plays at this position. His metrics are really good today for hits. He does have some low upside on a home run, but he's definitely high risk, high reward from that perspective. Then Andre Jimenez, he's also looking solid today from a multi-hit game. And then Bryson Stott also looks solid for Seattle, or sorry, for the Phillies. Excuse me. I don't know. I said Seattle. He looks really decent on the slate. Like I said, there's a lot of good value at this position. Scott, Garcia, Whitcomb, Polanco, and Altuve would be top ownership, with Austin Martin being a lone contrarian play on this one. Looking at third base, we do like Rafael Devers a lot. He's going to be hard to roster at this price point, but he's definitely worth a look here, as his hitting metrics and home run upside today are off the charts. Jose Ramirez is a contrarian play. Royce Lewis's metrics are also insane today. He's got good home run upside on this one, and then Miguel Garcia, already mentioned, can play here as well. Now, Miguel Garcia and Royce Lewis will be top owned guys, with Paul DeJong, Dylan Moore, and Jose Ramirez low owned upside guys. Josh Rojas and Novi Marte also some cheap Hail Mary position plays there. Looking at shortstop, obviously Whitcomb can play here, and he's going to be a core play. Bobby Witt Jr., though, if you want to go with Whitcomb at second base or you don't use him, then Bobby Witt Jr. has absolutely phenomenal metrics today. He definitely got good hitting upside. So does Ella De La Cruz. I think he's got a lot of hitting metric potential and stolen base upside on the slate, so he's definitely worth a look from that perspective. I do like Bobby Witt Jr. and Shea Whitcomb for being the top ownership, with Dylan Moore and CJ Abrams being the contrarian plays here. Jeremy Pena is definitely a value option as well. Looking at outfielders, Kyle Schwarber, Otani, and Jordan Alvarez, the top three, but some good value plays. Luis Robert Jr., he's a very risky one-off for the White Sox. Jake Fraley for Cincinnati, Darian Blanco for Kansas City, and Julio Rodriguez for Seattle definitely fit into that position. The contrarian plays here: Duran for Boston, Willie Abreu for Boston, Ozuna for Atlanta, and Friedel for Cincinnati. Also, Brandon Marsh, Stephen Kwan, Chess McCormick, Adolis Garcia, Ryan Hearn, Hunter Renfroe, Blake Rayleigh, and Dominic Canzun. So with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments, questions,